What up, y'all? Here's a new one for you today. We're going to be talking suspension, but not suspension so much on RVs. We're going to be talking about suspension upgrades for your tow vehicle. What up, y'all? Today's episode is brought to you by RV Fix. Let's walk through a quick scenario. You're on your RV trip that you've been planning for months and bam, something goes wrong. Slide won't move, fridge quits, the power's out. Now, instead of cracking open a cold one, it's fixing time. Total buzzkill, right? That's where RV Fix comes in. Call 1-844-66-RV-FIX and get connected via video call with a master RV technician. No middlemen, no dealership runaround, just real help, fast. And over 40% of these issues are fixed on the first phone call. If it's more serious, we've got you. We'll order parts and get warranty approval within hours, not weeks. Then we can either ship the parts to you and walk you through the fix on a second video call, send a mobile tech from our 2,000 plus tech network, or have you drop it off at the dealership once everything's ready to roll. And even better, you get to keep your rig during this whole process. No more waiting 4 to 6 weeks for basic repairs. With RV Fix, most shop fixes are done in just 3 days. Skip the stress, call RV Fix, and get back to camping, relaxing, and making memories. Use promo code RVVoice at checkout to get a 60% discount and lock in your price for years to come. Learn more at rvfix.com. Hope you enjoyed this episode. So we're going to be talking to road active suspension. RAS is what they go by. I got connected with another podcast buddy. He said you should talk to these guys because it's a very interesting suspension support system. And we're talking with Nolan Mast. He's going to kind of break it all down for us. I don't know all this stuff. I do know quite a bit about suspension in general, but this guy's going to really break it down for us in general. What RAS suspension products can do and help you improve your towing experience. So my mouse is doing the wrong thing. All right. Well, welcome, Nolan Mast. Thank you so much for being here, Nolan. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to tell us about you and your company. So,
hey, Jake, thanks for having me. Yeah,
absolutely, buddy. Absolutely, buddy. So I guess let's just talk about your background a little bit before we get into RAS. Like, where'd you come from? How long you been with the company? What's all that about?
Yeah, man. So originally I'm from Northeast Ohio, born and raised on essentially a small farm. So grew up with kind of the outdoor, playing sports, all that fun stuff, and so I went to Mount Union College up in Northeast Ohio, majored in sport management. Wanted to really work, on the baseball, sports, anything like that, on the business side. Obviously didn't end up in that, but I guess you can consider working at road active suspension and kind of motorsports, trucks, all that good stuff, a close cousin. So didn't end up in a bad spot, and love what I'm doing here. So I've been here since 2010. I started in account management, working with dealers, working with customers. So, really got to kind of hear some of the pain points that the customers are feeling. The guys that are towing and hauling, they give us a call and they got a question about, hey, I'm having this sagging issue. I'm having an issue with instability and sway and all that stuff. And so, we'd be the people that would answer the questions and tell them whether or not our product would be a good product for them. But then also, got to work with what we call, dealers or, wholesale distributors and working with, RV shops, truck hitch installers, that kind of thing. And so got to hear from the tech side too and solving problems with them. So, really enjoyed that. One of the things that I really, figured out just, from a business structure standpoint, we had kind of a cult following with our customers. I mean, we had so many happy customers that love our product. And, the big pain point for our company was that nobody knew about our product. The barrier to entry, for marketing the product, back 15, 20 years ago, especially was, you had to buy advertising, you had to, through TV or through magazines, and that's $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a spot there for a small business. That's a huge issue. And so we kind of always relied on our dealers to do the marketing for us. And that doesn't always work out well where they've got some other competitor products there that they need to sell as well. And so, one of the big pain points is, hey, nobody knows about knows about the product. So they're presenting to the customer this new solution, or what was new to them. They've never seen it before. It's much harder to sell for the tech or the salesperson there in the shop. So in 2018, I went to the owners of the company and said, hey, we had worked with we had kind of outsourced some of the marketing to some local companies, some companies in the space, and I said, hey, I've been kind of liaison with them. Let me kind of handle. I know what the customers, what the customers need. I know the speak of the customers, and so we really I took what the customers were saying, and because I would just, we would get calls from customers all day. We'd get messages from customers, and everybody loved the product. And so, my goal was really to take that and put it out in front of the masses. So using, the barrier to entry started to lower for marketing and advertising during the 2010s, especially with social media and advertising. So we went essentially full digital and just scaled from $0, in ad spend, and just started putting it out there in social media, taking testimonials from our customers and putting it out there in social media, and eventually started boosting some of that stuff, and then got some video, and then got, we started working with some video companies and started getting a little bit more higher quality of videography and photography. And so we just, we've scaled from that. And so, we still have a long way. There's obviously there's a huge market for it, as long as there's pickup trucks out there and guys towing and hauling, boats and RVs, you name it, even work trucks, there's going to be a demand for suspension upgrades like our product. So that's where we're at today. And, we've seen some significant growth over the last 5-6 years. And so we're still on a good path, and, with still a really high quality product.
Absolutely. I didn't even know you guys had a social media. I just pulled it up. You got almost 100K followers, man. Obviously you did something right.
Yeah, man. It's been, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So it's, it's a lot of trial and error, and just trying to figure out what the algorithm loves, what catches the eye of guys and people that are in the algorithm, what resonates with them. And we found a few things that I think that has worked. And so we, kind of mix in some of the testimonials that our customers send in with some things that are eye catching for, people that, scrolling through their phone. So, and then also obviously create social proof for people that see our ads. They go back into, our social medias and see what everybody's saying about the product. Obviously, it's going to help us out.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm just kind of looking at, you got racing, and I know I got hooked up with my buddy Adam Deacon. He runs a podcast for fishing. I can't exactly remember the name of the podcast, and I apologize.
Yeah.
Shout out, same idea.
The Serious Angler podcast. Yep, good guys.
Good guys. Yeah, he's a great dude. And he kind of got me hooked up with you because, we tow RVs, obviously. He tows a boat, and his boat's not light, so I didn't know they were that damn heavy. But interesting stuff that you guys got a good background, and, it's kind of interesting to see, how you guys got your start, and then like using, social media to kind of boost the way into it right in that 2010 era. Because I don't know how old you are, but I'm guessing you got maybe a couple of years on me, but I was like 2012 is when I got out of high school, and that's when social media really started to kind of just out of nowhere. Yeah. Facebook was kind of a thing, and then all of a sudden 2010, 12, 13, 14 just started going.
Man, absolutely wild. It's funny that you say that, because I'm just thinking back, the first year of Facebook was my freshman year in college. So that would have been like 2004, I think it was, and it was just coming out. And I remember starting to use Facebook in 2004. It was only for college kids back then. Like, you couldn't use it outside of college, right? And then I think my senior year, they started to let people other people start using Facebook, and I was like, everybody was opposed to it, right? But we had no idea where we couldn't conceptualize where or like what direction it would go. We only knew the internet the way that we knew the internet back in 2004, 2005, up until that point. So I mean, just crazy to me that, it's not something I want. Obviously, I didn't go to school, technically speaking, for marketing, but I'm sure there's a lot of principles. I took some courses, minored in marketing, but I took some courses in that, and there's still a lot of things that apply in marketing, now, but it looks very different. And I couldn't have thought that would be a major tool that I would use on a day-to-day basis to reach millions of people every day. So pretty wild.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So let's hop into the RAS, like the overview of RAS. So like for listeners who may not be familiar, can you explain what RAS suspension is and how it works, especially when it comes to towing?
Yeah. So RAS stands for Road Active Suspension. And the company started in the 1990s. It was originally called Roadmaster. There's another Roadmaster. The original instance of our company was designed in South Africa, right? So people in South Africa and the owner, had no knowledge of the other Roadmaster out in Washington. Good people over there too. But so we brought that. The owner of the company brought the Roadmaster active suspension system over from South Africa, and the original purpose and design of Roadmaster active suspension was for the mail couriers out in the bush that were kind of going and driving in kind of rough roads, and we're experiencing a lot of bounce and instability and all that good stuff. And so it was really to kind of shore that up and smoothen out the ride quite a bit. And so it was brought over here. We kind of retrofitted it and made it more beefy for the United States market and what we saw for the United States market. And the owner originally, Clive Shevitz, here, the owner, he brought it over here. He owned an Amco transmission station. And so what he would do is he would bring in vehicles, obviously United States vehicles. There was the vehicles that were made in South Africa, and they had vehicles here. So he had to, do our R&D work on the vehicles here to ensure proper fitment, but then also to come up with, upgraded fittings and upgraded designs, essentially, to better fit the market of the United States. So our focus in the 2000s was more focused a lot on the 12 and 15 passenger vans, just really improving the safety and stability of those vans, because during that time they have a high center of gravity. And so during that time, they were seeing a lot of the churches, youth organizations were seeing a lot of rollovers. And so we did some testing at TRC. This is before my time. Did some testing of the transportation. It's an independent testing facility. It's the Transportation Research Center in Ohio. And they showed significant improvement in the handling and stability of those vehicles in emergency maneuvers. Because of what it did for the stability of the vehicles. Because what happens when you have a high center of gravity and you start to do an oversteer, the weight of the vehicle shifts in a way that causes the rollover. So you install the road active suspension system, and it keeps those leaf springs in a much more stable position by holding the leaf springs in arch position with our tension coil springs. So that was the purpose and the focus primarily. In the 2000s, there was a lot of workshop applications, fleets, RVers, tow, what have you. But that was really what kind of chugged the business along in the 2000s. And then we had contracts like Salvation Army and some church insurance companies that would either require or recommend our product for a lot of these 15 passenger vans. Obviously, the 15 passenger vans are not as popular as what they were in the 2000s. You still see them on the roads, but they're just not as popular. Around 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, we started to focus more and more, working with our dealers, and during that time we saw, and I saw a lot of I would say our happiest customers would be like your weekend RVers that would go on a trip on the weekend or in the summertime, take a few trips, and needed some additional stability. Needed to reduce some of that squat because they were seeing some white knuckle towing. And so that was really where I was. Yeah, it was really, exactly.
I get it.
And so that's really what I saw as like our happiest customers. And so during my time when I transitioned over into marketing, that's really who I focused the most on is, and then that's where we received the most of, because that's where we received the most of the testimonials and reviews are those RVers and the guys with the travel trailers, the guys with fifth wheels, and they may tow 5% of the time that they're driving their truck, and the other 95% of the time they're just driving. It's a daily driver, right? And so that's what naturally. So we started to target those people primarily through our advertising. So that's kind of where we're at today.
Very cool. Yeah. So it kind of just grew into its own thing. Like it went from one thing to another thing to another thing. So that's very interesting. So it went from vans, but now you kind of lean towards more of the truck market, I'm assuming, just because of what trucks became a luxurious item since, mid 2000s. They started to become having a truck is a luxury, like the F-150s now, the Dodge, whatever it is, the Chevy, GMC, Silverado, whatever, all those things are incredible. I mean, some of them are just they're like a Cadillac now. Cadillac used to be the luxury or whatever. But it specifically benefits us mostly for towing, and this, you said high center of gravity. So anything that's like a heavy truck vehicle or like I'm guessing electrical, plumbing, whoever that is, does anybody else outside of that, like, I guess like fire stations or anything like that use these things, or what makes it just specifically beneficial for these types of vehicles?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much anything with leaf springs on the rear, we can fit. So, anything less than what was considered a 1-ton truck. So, it would be like a 30 GMC 35, a Chevy GMC 3500 or F350 or less. Like you said, mentioned, fire stations and brush trucks. We've done a ton of those types of applications. Obviously these fire stations have, much bigger trucks. We don't fit those. But, pretty much anything that's got leaf springs, one ton or less. I will say, so, our happiest customer, like our happiest customer is going to be your Tacoma half-ton truck guy. You start getting into heavier 3/4 ton, 1-ton truck guys. With the way that our product works, you start to see diminishing returns on the 3/4, especially the 1-ton truck guys, because a lot of those 1-ton trucks, we call them 1-tons, but your F350s, Super Duties, they come with the factory top overload spring, and that factory top overload spring needs to be removed in order to fit our product. So there's still, obviously you're taking a step back in order to install our product. There's still some benefit to be had with our current offering, in that you're going to see there's a delay in engagement with the factory top overload spring. Our spring engages immediately. And then also there's going to be a lot of those guys with that factory top overload spring. They'll complain about excessive bounce because it's hitting off of the snubber that attaches to the frame, hits off of the overload spring. So that, you take that off, install our product, you're going to notice a huge difference in the reduction of the bounce. It's going to have a better impact on the stability and the handling of the vehicle. So also as you're getting heavier, we've tuned our springs to what we feel and to what our customers say is a great balance of unloaded ride comfort, because it's engaged 100% of the time. Our product is going to be engaged once you set the tension on our spring. Our product's going to be engaged 100% of the time. So it's going to engage in proportion to force that's applied. So as weight is, if there's a shift in weight, if there is additional weight that's being added down onto the leaf springs, our spring is engaged proportionate to that. But so our spring is really, like I said, is what we're aiming for is a balance of additional strength for when you're loaded, and then also comfort for when you're unloaded, because the concept behind our product is you don't want to ever have to make any sort of readjustment. For a lot of the people that most of our customers, they want to be able to install something that they don't want to have to touch. You know, they may already have a weight distribution hitch, right? And so there's that component. You know, there's so many other things going on with their RV that they have to worry about. You know, installing our product, you know, it's literally a 45-minute, 1 hour install. So install it, done. You know, you don't have to worry about anything. So the flip side of that is if you install any sort of suspension upgrade, you're going to have some sort of impact on your ride quality when you're not, or your experience as a truck owner, or your ride quality when you're loaded. So installing an airbag, there's been plenty of times when, you know, customers have asked, hey, why should I install your product over an airbag? And there's been times where I've said, hey, you may want to go with an airbag because they're towing a 1-ton truck. You know, they've got a 1-ton truck towing a huge fifth wheel, and they're completely maxed out. And they're complaining about their truck squatting. Our kit is not going to increase your squat and add enough strength for your 1-ton truck, and you're not going to feel the same benefits as maybe a 1/2-ton guy that's close to maxing out their payload capacity. So, you know, what we've done is really try to provide a good balance of added strength, stability, reduced bounce, and comfortability when you're not loaded, and complete simplicity, you know, with or without a load.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm learning a lot here. You brought up factory top overload springs here. I actually typed it in. It's about the same cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so a lot of those factory top overload springs, you know, you order it from the so when you get if you go on a lot to like a Ford lot, and you're going to go buy an F350, that F350 is going to have that factory top overload spring. But the real conundrum comes in if, you know, these trucks are rated for a certain weight rating, your gross vehicle weight rating, your payload capacity. And I will say customers now are a lot more educated around that stuff than they were 10, 15 years ago when I was talking to a lot of those people, which is a really good thing.
My truck can tow it.
Right.
They're exactly out there, man.
They're still out there. Yeah. But you know, that doesn't mean your truck's not going to experience, just because you're towing something within your weight rating, doesn't mean your truck's not going to experience squat and bounce and all that white knuckle driving. There's that gray area. You know, you get to about halfway, depending on the truck that you have, but you get to about halfway your payload or your weight rating, gross vehicle weight rating, you're going to start to experience some of those negative, you know, driving aspects. So, there's some good products out there, but they're depending on what you get, you can have some negative side effects.
Absolutely. Yeah. So overall benefits, there's quite a few to it. And so let's kind of hop into like overall how it improves stability and handling. So how does it kind of do so? I mean, I know what it is. I can see it, right? I mean, you latch on basically the top end of the leaf spring where the shackle is, and then you do sort of where the axle is itself. So how does it improve towing performance? You know, you talked about rollover with the 15-passenger van, increased stability. What I'm seeing or what I'm thinking in my head is this is a complete full range of motion. If you think of it like a knee, right? You get weaker or stronger at certain points, right? When you talk about add a leaf, you got one leaf spring and then you have basically a separate leaf spring up here. Well, they don't touch until here and then it's stronger. It sounds like it gives you more strength throughout the full range of the suspension motion, right? So
right.
I guess how does it, help?
Yeah. Yeah. So the leaf spring, there's just going to the actual leaf spring design on your vehicle. So every leaf spring, the front shackle is fixed and the rear is a swinging shackle, right? So it's important to fit our kit on the rear half of the spring because it's a swinging shackle. It's a swinging shackle. That's where the leverage is going to be applied, and the front always does mimics what the rear. Generally speaking, what the rear is going to do. So if we're applying, we're essentially taking a opposite of a shock. A shock is pushing away. Our spring is a tension coil spring. So when you set the tension on the spring, it works like a muscle to hold that leaf spring in more of an arch position. So the more weight that's applied to the leaf spring, obviously naturally the leaf spring wants to flatten out. Our tension, variable rate tension coil spring is working to hold that leaf spring in an arch position. So it's counteracting that downforce. You know, in the case of an axle, like an axle wrap wheel hop, the torque from when you're pushing out a lot of torque, like when you're towing or hauling a heavy load or accelerating hard, the axle is actually going to rotate backwards, which is going to twist your leaf springs into more of an S shape. That twist can bounce back and causing some instability and stress and driveline in some of the parts. So our spring is going to, and that in cases like that, our spring is going to stabilize that leaf spring and stabilize the axle, holding that leaf spring in an arch position. So yeah, it works. You know, it's different than like an airbag or like a bump stop space or like a bump stop or something like that are out there. Those products are essentially resisting the weight at the frame of the vehicle. And so we're going to the actual leaf spring and working in conjunction with the existing leaf spring.
So are you, when you're topping, so shackle side of things, not the axle side, shackle side, are you connecting to the leaf spring part of the shackle or the top end of the shackle?
Yeah, it's we have a hook that goes over the rear eye of the spring, the eyelid of the spring.
Oh, okay.
And then on the front side, which is on the front side of the U-bolts, we've got a crossbar that attaches on the front side. You hook it over the rear eye of the spring, right? And then you set the tension on the spring on the initial installation, which pulls that leaf spring into more of an arch and works to hold that leaf spring into more of an arch.
Okay, and that doesn't add any more stress to the leaf spring at all. It actually helps.
Yeah, so it's gonna hold the leaf spring into more of an arch. So when you're unloaded, generally speaking, you'll see about a 3/4 of an inch to about 1.5 inches raise in the rear. But with the independent testing that we've done at the TRC, it showed almost a 6, depending on the kit that you use and what vehicle you put it on, but a 5 to 6 times decrease in suspension fatigue damage versus just regular factory leaf springs. So and then that's a common question is like, hey, would this put undue pressure on the leaf springs and wear and tear on the leaf springs? It's actually the opposite when it comes to towing or hauling. Yeah. So one of the most common misconceptions about our product, and the most common questions we get is if there's a negative impact on leaf spring damage, if our kit will damage the leaf springs and cause additional wear and tear. And what we found through independent testing at the TRC is that there's actually a positive impact in reducing the suspension fatigue damage over factory OEM suspension. And so it's going to vary from vehicle to vehicle and obviously how much weight is being towed. But when the vehicle is under load, our product's going to decrease the suspension damage by up to 6 times. So that's very significant. And so we were, obviously we knew that there was going to be some sort of positive, we thought there was going to be some sort of positive correlation there because of the dynamics. But, when they came back with, it was actually 5.8 time decrease in suspension fatigue damage. So there's one data point that we were super, super excited about.
Most definitely. And you guys, this is kind of it helps enhance safety, but also comfort, right? So you were talking about major sway, major rollover risk when you started with the 15-passenger vans. That was a big kickoff for you guys, right? That was the first, main focus, right? And it's evolved from there. But does it really improve ride comfort overall? That's like a concern for me. If I don't have anything behind me, I'm not towing anything, I don't have any large loads behind me or anything, heavy loads in the back in the bed. What does it do for ride comfort overall?
Yeah, great question. And like one of the most common pressing questions that I've gotten. So, if you think about if you're going to add, if you were to add a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton leaf spring to a 1/2 ton truck, or if you were to add additional leaf springs to a 1/2 ton truck, that's going to stiffen, that's going to harden the ride. That's one of the things that pickup truck owners like the least about those solutions. Same with if you were to keep a high amount of pressure in airbags, you would have a negative impact on your ride quality. Of course, you wouldn't do that on purpose, but so our product, when we go to tune our spec out our springs, we wanted to be able to balance what we felt was an optimum amount of strength for especially your half ton, which is the number one vehicle that's purchasing, or the number one truck that's purchased in the USA. You see it on the road every day, and it's the most popular for guys that are towing and hauling too, just by numbers wise. So our product is tuned such that so there's a 20 in the testing that we did at the independent research facility is a 23% decrease in transmissibility, which is the wear and tear, which is the rebound and the impact that's physically felt down through your leaf springs. So that's a pretty significant decrease with that transmissibility. But then just also the way that our kit works, it's working in proportion to the force that's being applied at all times. So, and also the way that our spring engages with the leaf spring is different than if you were to add a leaf spring on top of a leaf spring. There's kind of that give and take in the application of our product, and the progressive rate of our spring, and kind of the angle that it's working. It's very similar to if you're in a lift and weights, right? Doing a free weight is going to feel much different. You could have 50 pounds on a free weight versus 50 pounds on a cable. That weight's going to feel very different. It's the same weight, but it's going to feel very different. The same with our product. The feel is, and that's one of the things that pickup owners are always most pleasantly surprised about. It's not going to necessarily make it softer, make it ride more like a Cadillac, but some of the best descriptions I've had is it hugs the road much better. It's much more responsive without being too harsh or stiff. So it has a little bit more of a sporty feel. So there's that benefit. It may firm it, but it's not going to stiffen it, harshly or anything like that. So that's one of the most consistent pieces of feedback that we get from our customers.
Interesting. So I'm thinking, I grew up in the country in Nebraska, and they're washboards, like gravel roads, right? I mean, have you ever been on that? It just starts to wobble like that. The ass end of the truck usually it'll start to skip and want to turn the thing sideways. Does it help reduce stuff like that? Just because you know what I'm talking about?
100%. Yeah. And that's one of the, if you think back to the original design of our product in South Africa, I mean, that's one of the things that they faced the most is, those washboard roads. And going back to the original design and purpose of our product, and that's going to quiet that down a lot, because it's dampening that leaf spring, the continuous leaf spring rebound, and so that's still relevant, even though we were targeting, and the primary purpose for our product is for guys towing or hauling. There's still that original design purpose of our product, which is dampening on those harsh washboard type roads.
Very interesting. Yeah, that was a common occurrence as a kid. Going too fast over washboards. I was sideways a couple times, so I was not very comfortable.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. Been there. Got that T-shirt. Yep, been there. Yeah, the wear and tear. These things, this product kind of reminds me. You said reduce wear and tear by 6 times, which is crazy. That's a fun. It kind of reminds me of like older gentleman. Typically, he has like a catcher, still playing softball, and he's playing full on catcher gear. Have those sort of kind of reminds me. Have you ever seen those? Yeah, that's what this product kind of reminds me of. I guess you want to put it into perspective for someone. It kind of helps with everything and just reduces overall stress, which is really cool. So So why should like RV owners, kind of transitioning into the next thing, why should RV owners consider RAS suspension? Is there something every owner should know with the towing about this? Like, I think this would be like perfect for like the truck camper owner, right? But then there's the question with like the, one add a leaf, or two, the airbag system. So why do you think this would be great for someone like that? You said the high rollover, so that's one thing, especially to consider with a truck camper. But why do you think this might be a better option for between those options?
Yeah, so for RVers, we always tell people, go get, if you're towing a travel trailer, and you do the same thing probably, is go get a good weight distribution hitch first. Yeah, our product works phenomenal with the weight distribution hitch. There might need to be some adjustments done, but we get feedback every day from pickup owners that they have their weight distribution hitch. They've messed with it so many times to try to get it just right, and they're still squatting in the back. They're still squirrely. They went to a professional installer, the weight distribution hitch. They're still a little bit squirrely, or they may still be squatting in the back. They need some additional support, and so our product works great with those applications. Sometimes with like an airbag setup, that can fight with the weight distribution hitch, and they don't typically work well together. Also, even if you don't have a weight distribution hitch, if you're just, if you're towing something maybe that's a little bit lighter, and maybe you don't need that, and you want to just be able to put something on that's set, completely fit and forget, road active suspension is going to be a perfect solution for you. With an airbag setup, that for very common, one of the most common, things that the pickup owners are looking for is like, hey man, I got this travel trailer. It might have 400 or 500 pounds of tongue weight on it, maybe a little bit more. I have an F-150, and I don't want to have to get an airbag and deal with all that just for this travel trailer that I'm towing, half a dozen times a year. Because an airbag system, you're going to have to, if you don't have a compressor, you don't have the lines and all that good stuff, that you're able to easily control it. You're going to, first of all, you're going to invest $1,500 to get that thing installed, because chances are, the instruction can say, oh, it's going to take 2 or 3 hours, but you get into it, it's going to take you all day, 2 days. That's if you're mechanically inclined. Most guys don't want to have to mess with it. So they take it somewhere to get it installed. It's going to cost you probably $2,000 to get it installed, everything included. And then you're going to have to worry about maintenance on it. There's maintenance schedule you have to worry about. You have to keep a certain amount of pressure in it, all for just towing or hauling, half a dozen times a year, Yep. And so with our product, you put it on, it covers you in that gray area between where you're sitting at with your payload capacity and the max payload capacity. And just forget about it. I mean, we get a lot of feedback that, hey, I didn't expect it, but this has actually helped my everyday driving, and I feel more stable, more responsive in my everyday driving. So you get some additional benefits with that. So that's on the RV side. I would say, as long as, if you have a half ton, 3/4 ton, and you're under your payload capacity, but you need additional support and you don't want to have to mess with anything, you fit it and forget it, road active suspension all the way. If you have a really heavy 3/4 ton and 1 ton, with our current offering, I would say, and you're still squatting, I would say, if you're still squatting with your truck, you're squatting more than 2 or 3 inches, I would say you may want to go with an airbag setup. We are coming out, we are working on, done some testing, and working on, in the process right now, working on a heavier duty kit that's a better offering for your 1 ton trucks. So looking for that later this year. Getting into the truck camper side, same thing applies, when it comes to your 3/4 ton, 1 ton trucks. If you have a big Arctic Fox or something like that, where you're just massive, massive truck camper, I would say, the road active suspension is not going to be the right tool for the job there. I would say go with like an airbag setup or something like that right now. That might change later this year if, we do some testing on that kind of stuff, or with a heavier duty offering. But if you have a lighter truck camper, you have a half ton, maybe some 3/4 tons that have a lighter truck camper maybe that's designed for overlanding, that kind of thing. That's something that the overlanding market has really, that's increased over the last several years in popularity. We don't see as much over on the East Coast as you guys do on the West Coast, but this is a prime. That's a really good application for our product. If you have a lighter truck camper like that, the airbag setups are generally, from the feedback that I've gotten, is not optimal for some of those overlanding type scenarios, and what some of those guys are looking for. So definitely, if you have a Tacoma half-ton truck and you're doing some overlanding with a light truck camper or medium weight truck camper, great application for us. Because a lot of those applications too. There's a lot of equipment that you're putting in the vehicle aside from just the truck camper.
Yeah.
Ideal for us.
Yeah, and interesting. You said that just the guy that did it. Just the example you said. He said not only did it improve the towing quality, but it improved the driving quality in general. It just feels better driving. It's not swaying a little bit. My F-150, it swayed, but I love driving the thing, so it was just fun anyway. But it wasn't, stiffen up the back end, make it a little tighter turning and all that. So completely understandable for that. Is there any other common signs or issues that might indicate it's time for them to maybe invest in something like this, or airbags? I know you talked about just squatting overall. I said 2 to 3 inches. It's going to have to be an airbag. Is there maybe a certain time frame? You're like, hey, is this going to help that, or you just have to redo the whole suspension kit yourself or itself?
Yeah. If you start to see, you're going to notice it right away. If you have if you just purchase a RV or something like that, you're going to notice that squat right away. First thing I would do, if you have an RV or you just purchase something like an RV, just make sure you get a weight distribution hitch first, and then if you think you need additional support, then I would go with look at our product, look suspension upgrade, and we'll fill in that gap for you.
Sweet, very much. Very, very cool product. I appreciate you taking time again. What about installation? So let's move on to that installation process. Is this something that someone can do at home, or do you guys have to have someone do it? Personally, I feel probably inclined enough to do something like this, but not everyone can do so. So what does that look like?
Yeah, super simple. And the vast majority of our sales now are coming from direct retail. So it could be e-trailer, online resellers, what have you. Because the installation is so simple on, I would say 85% of our applications. Mm-hmm. There's no, essentially all it is, you get the rear of the truck up in the air, let the axle hang free. You can do one side at a time, so just like you're changing a tire. Once you get that rear up, you let the axle hang free, like I said. Hook the rear eye over the rear hook of our spring over the rear eye of the spring. Connect the tube on the front side of the U-bolts. Set the tension on our spring. We provide instructions on what tension setting. There's some adjustability depending on your application if needed. So set the tension on the spring. Lock nuts in place. Put the tire back on, and you're done. So it's super and there are on different vehicles there might be some minor modifications or accessories, but it's nothing that's going to be again, you don't have to remove U-bolts or anything like that. And that was one of the main modifications and one of the main changes that the owner of our company, Clive, did back in 2012 is we had on all our vehicles up until 2012, we had a flat bracket that fit in underneath the U-bolts. It was like an L-shaped flat bracket that fit underneath the U-bolts, and we still use them on certain applications, but that we're not able to use our easy install kit on. But that was one of the key modifications that he made in 2012 was when we released this, the new easy install kit. What was new back then was to allow people to easily install themselves. One of the main problems that we run into is if you're from a northern state and you have to remove U-bolts, there's a good chance you're going to have to replace the U-bolts, and you're going to run into the U-bolt strip in, and not fun stuff. So not having to remove the U-bolts just really improved the instability or the installation part of our product offering. So yeah, super easy. Unless if you have a truck, an F-250, F-350, or Chevy 25, 3500, that kind of thing. A lot of those vehicles come with the factory top overload spring. So in those cases, it's going to be a little bit more difficult installation because you're going to have to remove the U-bolts. But for everything else, it's going to be super simple.
Interesting like that, talk like you're putting in front of the U-bolts, the whole thing. Not everyone knows what that is. I do. So like putting in front of the axle of the U-bolts is not going to put any extra stress on that, but because you're pulling the two basically. You don't see any of that?
No, we haven't seen like any sort of like bent U-bolts or anything like that. I mean, the material they use for the U-bolts, I mean, is really high, quality, meant to withstand a lot of stuff. So we haven't, again, we've been 13 years since we released this style.
Nothing.
And so, really good results. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So what about maintenance? Is there any maintenance required with these things? Is there any upkeep, or do you have to go back and change them out every once in a while? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, just generally speaking, I mean, there's no maintenance required. I mean, we would recommend, spraying like an AMSOIL. We e-coat that. We e-coat everything, or everything possible, or zinc plate, to help, protect, to be able to last up underneath there. It's a good thing after you install it, if you, spray some AMSOIL or something like that up underneath there, additional protectant, in around our springs. But other than that, I mean, there's, you could do that. There's a content creator up in Canada that he sprays down underneath his suspension. He's got a few different things going on under there where he sprays it down like once a year. That's, that's kind of going, he's up in Canada too, so you get some, salt on the roads and things like that, and to help kind of go above and beyond. But, it's always a good idea to do that, but it's not necessarily something that we recommend. It's not like common for people to do that. You should expect the product to stay on there for certainly the life that you're going to be using your truck for.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's pretty simple. It's these around $600 an hour of install period. Process.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, I would say,
sounds like,
yeah, no, it's for people that are installing themselves with just common tools, like off the ground, you would expect 60 to 90 minutes. Like our shops, our dealers and installers, like professional installers that have all the equipment. I mean, they'll knock it out in 30, 45 minutes easily. And with most of the time going towards taking the tires off, so, yeah, I mean, 60 minutes, 90 minutes for the vast majority of our applications.
Not bad at all. So here's a question for you that's running through my head. Why don't you put them on travel trailers themselves?
Yeah. Look, I've seen, there's some other products out there that going on, working or going on the travel trailers suspension, to improve, the comfort and things like that. So, we have certain parameters that we work within, as far as the spring length, and the components that go with our springs. And just generally speaking, the travel trailer is a lot different dynamics going on underneath there. So springs are going to be shorter. There's going to be a lot of different configurations configurations of the spring. So from an R&D standpoint, it's difficult for us to look at that. So there would have to be a true. So for example, if an RV company came to us to say, hey, this is can you look at our RV and see if you can figure something out for us to fit? That might be if there's kind of a ready-made there for us. That might be something that we would invest money into, exploring from an R&D standpoint. But there's R&D responsibilities, that we have already to keep up with the different configurations and changes that the the vehicle manufacturers have. So then there's all these different makes and models of the travel trailers, so that can be difficult from an RV standpoint. But no, that's a great question. It's just there's some different dynamics going on there. Then it's not as simple as like doing for example like some sort of bump stop, where it's just going from the axle up to the frame. There's leaf spring dynamics that are going into place there. So
yeah, I never thought about the actual length of it all. It makes sense to me that you guys wouldn't do. I mean, it's a whole nother different product line for you guys at that point. And plus, you got other competition when it comes to that. You know, Kurt suspension is a huge one in the RV business, RV in general, RV industry. So yeah, there's, you know, independent. They still do the I can't even think what it's called. The rubber suspension. I can't remember.
Is it like you talking about a rubber leaf spring suspension or like a rubber like a timber and super spring?
It's
Sumo spring?
No, it's a torsion. It's very similar, but it's more of a. That's what I was thinking. It's almost like independent, but it's separate. It's not a full axle typically, so it kind of gives you more ground clearance in different ways. But my mind's just running on things right now because, you know, it's interesting conversation. So you mentioned some real life impact and success stories. You talked about that one guy. He just like, hey, I'm not really getting what I need out of the weight distribution hitch. Now you had people do weight distribution hits on top of these. I'm assuming you have. But are there any success stories that you'd like to share that would, you know, impacted people's experiences on the road while towing or not towing?
There's one that sticks in my mind because I've seen it. So this guy like sent us an email. He sent us an email. It was probably 10 years ago now. And he was driving a Ford Excursion. He was telling a story about how he's driving a Ford Excursion and something happened on the road. And he had to do an emergency maneuver. And he is 100% convinced that if he would not have installed our product, he probably wouldn't have made, like he wouldn't have survived. He would have been in a major crash. And he swears up and down. And I've seen him also comment a few times. He's so convinced. Like I've seen him comment a few times also in some of our ads that like this had such an impact on his Excursion. And an Excursion is like the Ford Excursion, if you remember, super heavy vehicle, you know, so the value proposition for our product on a Ford Excursion is probably the highest of any vehicle out there, just because the leaf springs are soft. If you like, when they're brand new, the leaf springs are soft. And then after a few years, those leaf springs, they get so soft and wallowy. And so, you know, you install our product and so we would see some of the biggest and happiest customers with the Ford Excursions. You know, the Excursions have kind of gone away. You don't, and probably you might see 100 on the road today. I don't know, but you know, you just don't see it as nearly as many on the road today. But that one sticks in my head because like he was so adamant and he's like commented and sung our praises multiple times on that. And that's, you know, a little bit different than what, you know, we're using for today, but it's still, you know, there's the weight shift involved on that Ford Excursion. And it translates to when you're towing or hauling in that, you know, when you've got a lot of weight on that tongue that far behind the axle, it has the very similar impact to your vehicle as an Excursion with a saggy leaf spring. You know, you've got all that weight on the vehicle, and so your leaf springs are flattened out. The front of your truck is up in the air, and so you don't have the near amount of control that you should have, and then you get in an emergency maneuver situation and you've lost control. So you know, that kind of illustrates to me, you know, the impact that our product can have, not just for an Excursion, but also for some of the guys towing or hauling.
Very interesting. I'm thinking when you brought up the Ford Excursion, I thought of the Ford Bronco too. It's like the number one rollover risk back in the day. Like they were like the most dangerous vehicle in the 80s and 90s. So I'm like, if you drive a Ford Bronco too, you should get some of this. Might be good for you.
100%.
Yeah, another question that popped up into my head because a lot of like the 80s, 90s, into the 90s, I don't think anything now is full for leaf springs. So I know like a lot of, you know, back in the 90s, I don't know about Chevy Dodge. I'm just, you know, grew up in a Ford family. They had full on leaf springs front. Are there any applications that they or no? Because there's a lot more moving component front end, just steering in general. So
that's right.
Just question.
Yeah, that's right. We get that question. Yeah, we get that question. Not as much now as we used to. But yeah, Yeah, look, we don't. Our answer is no. We don't fit the front. However, there have been guys that have purchased our product and say, "Hey, I don't care if you say you don't fit it. I want to purchase your product because I already have them on the back and I want them on the front." So they have purchased, we're like, okay, but there's no warranty on this thing because we've spec'd it for the rear leaf springs, right? And so I've seen guys. I've had a few guys post pictures of it, and I think one might have been on an excursion too. We have. I mean, there's been guys that fit it, but like we won't warranty it. Like we won't like take returns on it if you try to fit it on there. So generally speaking, no.
Did they experience any better ride quality?
Yeah. No, there was a positive impact there. But I think like you said, I doubt that any vehicle nowadays have that front leaf springs on them anymore. So yeah, there's a lot, like you said, also there's a lot going on around the front leaf spring. Yeah.
Well, very cool. So, I mean, overall, kind of wrapping this thing up, I appreciate your time again, Nolan. Appreciate it because it's, you taking time out of your day to tell us about your product and what you guys have done and what you have, done for the customer. Towing safety, comfort, vehicle longevity in general. Super cool. It helps with handling, helps reduce wear and tear. Upgrading the suspension system can make a huge difference for your customers. And for half-ton towers, because that's a big giant part of it for our demographic, right? That's like 80% of it, or maybe 70%. Travel trailers, that's a good idea for them to at least look into RAS.
Yeah, I would say, as with any product, what I do is especially you're going to spend a few $100, a few thousand, you spend a few $1,000 on a suspension enhancement. Anytime I'm spending at least a few $100, I'm going down the rabbit hole and doing my research. So I would encourage everybody to do the exact same thing. So if you're looking for a suspension enhancement, go down the rabbit hole, look up road active suspension, look what everybody says about the product, compare it, make up your own mind. I think you'll find the value proposition and what we're offering is going to be the best bet for anybody with less than half-ton, and a lot of 3/4 ton trucks, and you'll be happy with it. So, again, 26, 27 years now, tried and true. So, so we have a really good track record and of making the customer happy. So I think you'll be happy with it.
Awesome. I forgot to ask one specific question about RAS suspension. The question is, does adding these leaf spring or the spring suspensions upgrade system from RAS, does it actually increase payload capacity or actual towing capacity?
No, great question. I think people have gotten smarter with that over the years. But still one of those common questions we get. Road active suspension nor any other product is going to increase your payload capacity or gross vehicle weight rating. The manufacturer of the pickup trucks, there's a lot of different things that go into that. There's your brakes, your transmission, your frames, your suspension is one of them. But our product will not increase your payload capacity. It will increase or improve the way that your truck handles that weight. So, if your payload capacity is on an F-150 might be 2,000 pounds, right? What happens generally is, you might load up 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 pounds in the bed of your truck, or you might put 500-600 pounds in the on the hitch, which is still within your capacity. Our product is going to improve the way that it's going to improve the suspension strength and the way that truck handles that weight. So definitely not going to increase your payload capacity, and it's not meant to do that. We try to make sure we're presenting it properly, and we even go as far to say is like if you're over your payload capacity and you're looking to our product to road active suspension to increase your payload capacity or to boost it, we say don't buy our product. That's not what our product is for. Our product is great for pickup trucks that are towing or hauling up to the weight capacity of your truck.
Yeah, gear ratio. You got a whole slew of different things to actually increase your payload capacity. If you want to increase your payload capacity, buy a bigger truck.
100%.
That's a better way to do it. Just think about it that way. Going nowhere. So if you're ready to enhance your towing experience, be sure to check out RAS Suspension. Here's their website right here. I'll put it in the comments and the description as well, and see how their products can benefit your truck or SUV. And is there anything else you'd like to close out with here before we kind of end it?
No, man. Thanks for having me again, Jake. And if you ever need me back, let me know. Happy to help.
Awesome, everybody. This is be dropping. All my episodes drop on YouTube here first, and you can check out RAS Suspension. Like I said, I'll put it in the description. But again, thank you very much, Nolan, for your time, and everybody out there. Stay tuned for more from the RV Voice. Sweet.